Hi everyone, this is Mark from Mobilities, and today we're going to be talking about preventative maintenance with respect to a spinal cord injury. So when you first get injured, probably one of the most noticeable changes in a general sense is going to be the changes in your physical abilities. Now depending on where your level of injury is, you may have lost some function, and that's going to be probably the most noticeable, especially to your family and friends that see you, in a wheelchair, in a hospital bed or something like that. Now in addition to that, there's going to be some impairment of several nervous systems. Again, depending on your level of injury, the nervous systems that control very vital body functions. So that's where the whole preventative maintenance kind of comes in. I tried to jot down a few items that I think are important, and some of them focus on the lack of these body functions that we can no longer control. Now I'm going to use myself as an example, talk about my level of injury and things that were affected due to my injury and that I have to do maintenance on, whether it's on a daily basis or over time. So I injured myself at the 5th and 6th cervical vertebrae. Now because of that, my autonomic nervous system has been impaired. Now if you think about what the autonomic nervous system does, it doesn't control the manual processes. It controls things that we all take for granted, like breathing, controlling your blood pressure, your temperature regulation, ability to sweat, those types of things, which now are impaired. Now, I wanted to bring that up because part of that is a term called autonomic dysreflexia, which can be scary. You've probably heard about it. But from the T6 level up, so T being thoracic, which is the spine around, in the kind of back region, T6 and above level of injury, you potentially could be exposed to autonomic dysreflexia. And what that is, just kind of the simplest way I can define it, is uncontrolled hypertension, high blood pressure. So if something happens where your body thinks it needs to raise your blood pressure, it's going to do so, but it may not be for the right reasons. And that's kind of the first bullet point that I want to talk about, is bowel and bladder with respect to preventive maintenance. So let's talk about your bowels. There's numerous ways to empty out your bowels. It just depends on the person and what works best for you. For myself, I have an every other day bowel program that I do with the use of a suppository. That's been successful for me. I've done it for about 10 years. Before that, I was just getting on and off the toilet and going when I felt that I could. It probably wasn't the smartest thing in the world, but I hear that a lot of us incomplete injuries are stubborn, and that's what I did for a while. But I switched, and I like it much better. There are other ways of doing it. You can do digital stimulation, where you're using a finger, which you go inside the rectum, and that stimulates the bowel. You could also use these things called enemies, which is just kind of like a little handheld enema that you can insert in the rectum, and it will help your bowels move along as well. It really depends, but it's important that you keep up with this and you get on a program. If you don't, you risk, again, autonomic dysreflexia kicking in, which would be the high blood pressure, which can result in stroke, death, bad stuff. So you don't want to get into that situation. Now, bladder. When we talk about the bladder, there's a term that's used called neurogenic bladder, and that's basically loss of, when you lose control of your bladder function, it becomes a neurogenic bladder. Another term which is commonly used is incontinence. So if I back up a little bit, the sacral region, which is the part of your spine that's near your tailbone at the bottom, that controls your bowel and bladder and sexual function. So if you have an injury level above, you're going to most likely be incontinent. You might have some control. If you're an incomplete injury, you might get some of that back. But I think in a general sense, most people are incontinent and have to deal with the bowel and bladder maintenance. Now, with the bladder, there's a few things that occur. Shortly after you get injured, you may notice that you may void or kick off urine. You have to be careful as to how much urine is being stored in your bladder at one time before you void. So for me, early on in my injury, I used to use a condom catheter because I was voiding quite a bit. And so the thought was that I wasn't keeping a lot of urine in my bladder, so I was able to use this condom cath for a while. Now over time, the bladder pressures built up and I wasn't emptying out my bladder as much, so that was kind of dangerous. So if you think about the bladder, its important function, it also works hand in hand with kidneys. Now if you go back to look at early spinal cord injuries, a lot of the deaths that occurred with spinal cord injuries was because of renal failure, which is the kidneys failing. They're very important. So that's why maintenance on the bladder is huge, and that's probably why I'm talking about it as one of my first bullet points. Make sure that you have a urologist. So you want to be able to go to the doctor and have, maybe every 6 months, go and get your bladder checked out. They'll probably run a blood test, just called like a Bun creatinine, which tests your kidney function. It's very important. You want to have that done. And then once a year, you probably have like a renal ultrasound done, where they're going to check and look at your bladder and your kidneys and just make sure they're normal shape and there's no kidney stones or anything funky going on in there. That's definitely important. You want to make sure that you take care of that. Now with the bladder in general, if you're not able to void on your own and wear like a leg bag with a condom catheter, and this is with respect to a male, sorry, I should clarify that because this is my experience. If you can't void on your own and you have to go to something called intermittent catheterization, you want to make sure that you're emptying that out and not building up bladder pressures. Having too much urine in your bladder could potentially back up into these two, I guess you could think of them as long straws called ureters, back up into your kidneys. You don't want that to happen. That could be very dangerous. In addition, you want to limit UTIs or urinary tract infections. So if you are doing intermittent catheterization, you want to make sure that you are very sterile and clean. This was something that can be stressful at times, especially in your public restroom and people are banging on the door. It takes me roughly 8 to 10 minutes to cath myself because I'm trying to be very clean. Clean the area with the betadine or the antiseptic wipe before I insert the catheter. Because if you get a UTI, those can turn into kidney infections. They can be very dangerous. You don't want to have a lot of those and take antibiotics, yada yada. It's just, it's not a good thing. So that's a really important part of the maintenance. Bowel is one aspect of it. Bladder is a huge one. Make sure you have a doctor. Make sure you're emptying your bladder, taking care of those things. Okay. Next, I want to talk about skincare. So when you're injured and you're sitting in your wheelchair, a few of the things that you have to worry about are going to be pressure areas. So, and this could be, this could be in your chair. This could actually be in your bed. Pressure areas can occur in a number of places. But it's very important. You do not want to get a pressure sore or a pressure ulcer, as it's typically called. I had a stage 2 at one point on my ischium, down on on my left side, and it took a long time to go away. You cannot mess around with these things. If the pressure sores get bad enough, you can get an infection in the bone. This could be amputation. It could be an infection that you can't get rid of. It's very dangerous. So it's it's easy. Well, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's one of those things where you could put it in your phone, put it on your watch, remind yourself or your caretaker, every 30 minutes just to shift yourself. If you're in your chair, make sure, if you have a power chair, lean back and try to take pressure off your butt. Try and shift weight from left to right if you can be moved. If you're in a manual chair and you have that ability, just try and, take some pressure off. Typically I'll just put my arm on my chair and I'll lean on a table or something like this. Do it for like 30 to 45 seconds. Switch sides if you can. Just get off your butt. You want to shift around as much as you can. You don't want to get those pressure areas. I'm fortunate with my level of injury being incomplete that I have sensation, so I can feel when something's uncomfortable when I've been sitting on it too long. But it's not always true. My nerves sometimes play tricks on me. But the big picture idea is that you want to be moving around so that you're not endangering your skin. Now, you also want to have someone check out your skin. If you're fortunate enough to be able to do that, maybe you have a wall-like mirror or you have a mirror that you can use to turn around. Have someone just look at your skin to make sure that you aren't developing a pressure ulcer. You may not feel it or you may not know about it, but it's good to have someone kind of check you out as well so that you know. The other thing just related to skin is, you might find yourself using certain parts of your body over and over a lot. So I'll take myself as an example. You can see right here, I do a lot of wrist extension, and I use that quite a bit with my chair to grab a number of things. So you can see right here, this is pretty bruised and it's pretty dry. Same is going to be true with my elbows. Now, I put lotion on. I'm not the best at it, but it's one of those things where you want to make sure you keep this area from cracking. You don't want to get cuts or bruises. I've actually had a couple times bursitis in my elbow. It started with a small scrape or cut, and then you get it on your wheels, gets infected. The bursa sac, which is on on top of your around your elbow, it got inflamed, it got infected. I had to have them drain it out. It's not fun, dangerous. So you just want to be looking at your skin, especially those areas you use a lot, and just make sure that you're taking care of it, addressing it at that time. Okay, stretching. This is an important one. Very hard to do on your own. I can stretch certain parts of my upper body. I can't necessarily stretch my legs up. I can lay in bed and have my legs flat, but it's definitely important. You want to stretch as much as you can. This is going to help with if you have spasticity issues. It's going to just help with circulation if you're lifting your legs up, moving them around. Just keeping your muscles and tendons and everything kind of in good shape. You don't want to get stiff. This could affect a transfer. You could fall. I mean, there are all these things where stretching is just it's really good. But if you're not doing it, you could have some issues down the road. So make sure if you have the opportunity, have someone help you stretch the parts that you can, that kind of thing. All right, bone density. I wanted to talk about this because this is kind of becoming more and more concern for me because I'm 20 years post. With the spinal cord injury, and if you're sitting in a wheelchair, you're not using your large muscle groups. You're not putting weight bearing on those legs and those bones. So you are a perfect candidate for osteopenia or osteoporosis. Osteoporosis being probably more worse and down the line. This is something that older people, an able-bodied person who's older would worry about, but for us in chairs, it happens a little bit sooner. Now, for preventative maintenance, I would say if you have a standing frame, use it. Use it as much as you can. Weight bear, get those, put the weight on your bones and try to use as much as you can. The other thing that's going to help with bone density is having, that muscle mass around your bone. Now, I know this is hard because we have atrophy, especially if you're a complete injury. For me, since I'm incomplete, I have a lot of spasticity and I don't take any medication. So I'm able to keep some good muscle mass around my legs and other parts of my body. And that does help, from what I've heard, contribute to not having the bone density, like the brittle bones go in that direction. In addition, electrical stimulation. If you're fortunate enough to be near a rehab facility, you could go and do the EMS, the electrical muscular stimulation, or you have like a portable unit at home. Use it, kick off those muscles. That's going to help as well, kind of like with the spasticity being the involuntary movement. Calcium. Make sure you take your vitamins. This one, people tend to miss this a lot. Have your vitamin regimen. I mean, there's a number of things you should be taking besides calcium. As a quad, where vitamin D deficient, which is you can get that from the sun. Our good cholesterol's typically low, the HDL. And there's a number of things that you have to take or you should take, but calcium definitely is one of them. Make sure you take it. That's going to help for healthy and strong bones. Drink milk if you can, but I think the calcium tablets or chews are probably a better idea. Okay, and then one of the last things that I think is just kind of big is diet and exercise. Exercise might be a hard one, especially if you're in a power chair or your level of injury and you can't move that much. But diet for sure. Put good food in your body if you can. I know it can be expensive to buy healthy food, and it's not as convenient, and you may not have someone to help you get it. But you're going to notice a change if you're putting good stuff into your system, and I think that's going to help in the long run to keep you from getting infection or getting in the hospital. Good food's going to help you have strong, healthy skin, which relates to skin breakdown. Certain foods are going to have calcium in them, right, for bone density. Other foods are going to help you go to the bathroom easier with your bowel, your bladder as well, healthy urine. So all these things are important. And, with respect to exercise, if you can, it doesn't mean that you have to go and, push miles and miles, because, with the autonomic nervous system being affected, we have, I think it's the sympathetic component of the autonomic. We can't get that cardiovascular effect, right? You can't have your blood pressure working with you as you're working out hard and sweating and all those things, because, again, I can't sweat because of my level of injury, and my blood pressure doesn't tend to go up if I'm trying to exercise. But you still kind of get that tired feeling, and if you can do that, great. Whether you're just dancing to some music or doing a hand cycle, whatever you have access to, just get around and move. If you can get out of your chair and get on the couch, get on the floor, do what you can within moderation. Don't take any risks, but try and move around. And then lastly, which I didn't put this on my list, but I was just thinking about it now, try and do something you enjoy that you makes you happy and you have fun with it. I'm a very firm believer of mind over matter, especially with this injury. So if you're doing all of these things that I just mentioned, plus you're smiling and you're having a good time and enjoying yourself, I think that also contributes to a healthy lifestyle. So I think you should incorporate that into your regimen as well. So hopefully this helped. I know it's a lot of information, but these are the things that I try to go through, some of them on a daily basis, some of them on a weekly basis, but I think it's important. The physical limitations are one thing, but all of these others, bowel, bladder, your skin, stretching, bone density, all of these things are important, and as you get older, they're going to become even more important. So I think it's good to just get on a regimen now. All right, well, thank you for taking the time to watch the video today. That's all I have for the preventative maintenance items. If you have something else that I didn't mention that works well for you, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Abilities channel. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter. I'm always trying to post stuff there, aside from making the videos. And yeah, just keep working hard towards your independence, and I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today. Take care.